Joe Hopkins here, and today is another episode of Joe Likes Beer. Here I have gluten-free new Grist IPA. Why gluten-free? Well, because my wife can't have gluten, and she's not a big fan of beer, but there are some drinks that require beer. Like one of my favorites is I get kombucha and beer and mix the two, and it's pretty good. So I thought it'd be cool to share that with her, and I can't share it with her unless I get gluten-free beer. So I figured I'd give it a try. Oh, it's got the K. It's kosher, too. It's kosher beer. Handcrafted happiness. Why does it have a B? It says certified, and there's a B. Does that mean it's not as good as A quality beer? I don't know. Lakefront Brewery. You know what? I'm going to give this a try. What's in this? Rice, malted millet, hops, and yeast. Ooh. That sounds all right. Yeah, you can make beer without gluten, apparently, but is it any good? Is it any good? We'll have a beer and we'll talk about stuff. Let's see. Damn. No, that is fucking, hey, that's surprising good. That surprised me. That is really, really good. Alrighty. So while we have this drink, I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about, and I've thought about this before. You see, my wife was listening to some Sublime. I'm like, Bradley Nowell, right? He died far too soon. I love Sublime. We lost that dude too young. How many people have we lost far too soon like that? You know, people think generally of like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, John Morrison, the three J's, all died in like what, 1970? And something has occurred to me. I think back to other artists from that time period who were also very, very good, very popular at the time, who, if they had died in 1970, people might wonder, oh, just like with the other ones, what amazing things could they have done? But these other artists, instead of dying in the early 70s, lived long enough to really suck for a while, right? They didn't suck forever. Some people do end up just sucking from there on out. But I think of Carlos Santana, who put out a couple of amazing albums. Santana, great band, right? And then got into very progressive, jazzy kind of stuff that was not very good. And then managed to not be very good until the Supernatural album, which was, what, 96, 97, somewhere around there. So for like 25 years, let me think, 20 years, about 20 years, he just managed to not be, I mean, great guitarist, but he didn't, if he'd have died in 1972, 1973, we'd never know. We never would have known that he was going to go through that shitty period where just nobody wanted to listen to that. Look at Neil Young, right? Great musician. If he had died in the early 70s, we never would have had to have suffered through that weird electronic experimental phase. You don't remember it, do you? No, people don't. People don't remember that he had a weird electronic experimental phase. That you know, there was some guy on stage with him with a guitar. Okay? We don't remember that. Why? Because nobody wants to. Everybody wants to think of Neil Young the way he was in the late 60s and the way he became again in the early 90s. And nobody wants to think about what happened in between. Nobody does. So would Jimi Hendrix have sucked for a while if he hadn't have died? Would he have? Hey, every artist has their shitty period. Think of anybody. Think of them. They always had that period of time where they tried stuff that did not work. Now, a lot of them get through it. Right? Aerosmith broke up, put out a really shitty album or two, and then got back on track with Permanent Vacation. Permanent Vacation, great album, right? They rocked the 80s and early 90s. But there was that short period of time there where they sucked. Metallica had their Saint Anger album, which honestly I didn't think was that bad. The snare drum didn't bother me that much, and I thought the songs were pretty good. But, you know, a lot of people didn't like it. Personally, I was not a big fan of And Justice for All. Just to be honest with you. But hey, every artist has that, if they last long enough, they have that period of time where it's like really iffy. With a few exceptions. Somehow I think Jack White has managed to put out incredible music with every project he's done. Most people don't manage that. They don't pull that off. So did Prince. Everything he did, various different bands and iterations, it all came out pretty good. That's a rare thing. Usually you go through an experimental phase that you shouldn't have. Most artists do. Most. Or you could be like David Bowie, where you do great music and then disappear for like a decade. And then come back and do some more great music. And then disappear for another decade. And then come back and do something amazing and then die. So, yeah, you could do that. But most of these guys, I think, most of these artists, if they had lived, would have gone through a period of time where they put out stuff that sucked. But because they died when they did, they never got to suck. They never had that period of time that was total shit that you just want to forget, right? So, you got to think, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, right? Bradley Nowell, Kurt Cobain. They all had they never had that period of time. We never think of them as, hey, they had that short time when they sucked, right? Amy Winehouse, we'll always remember her amazing work and never have to suffer through that experimental thing that didn't work and we all want to forget about. We don't have to suffer through that because she died before she could do that. Now that kind of sucks because a lot of these artists I think would suck for a while and then, like so many artists do, come back and do something amazing that we all love. And we don't get that second wind. And that sucks. That sucks. I would have liked to have known what Jimi Hendrix would have done after his sucky period. When he comes back and, you know, comes back from that weird experimental stuff nobody likes and does something amazing. Like Santana did. Carlos Santana did that. He went from amazing to what the fuck is this and I don't want to listen to it, and came back and just blew our minds. And as much as people liked that Supernatural and the other like albums he started doing late 90s, early 2000s here in the US, one of the best albums I think he did, I forget the name of it, but he did an album with Maná, right, which is a Mexican rock band, if anybody knows who they are. You listen to it. Listen to some of the stuff he did with Maná. Great. That's his best work right there. As far as his modern stuff, I still think Abraxas is his greatest work from that first time period. I think that's his best album, period. Just hands down. But of his new stuff that he's put out, the stuff in the last 25, 30 years, something like that, I think the album with Maná, that's worth a listen. And, yeah. So what do you think? Do you think Jimi Hendrix would have had a sucky period of time there? He was very experimental. Keep that in mind. The more experimental you are, the more likely you are to have a shitty album at some point. Look at Queen, right? Everybody thinks Queen. Oh my God, how could Queen go wrong? Yeah, the Flash Gordon. They did 2 soundtracks. Everybody thinks of The Highlander because that was amazing. They did the soundtrack to Flash Gordon. On the greatest hits, you get the song Flash. Ah, champion of the universe. You get that one. Why? Because as shitty as that song is, it was the best song on that album. That was a bad album. It was bad. Yeah. Highlander, great soundtrack. Great. They did great. Flash Gordon, yeah, shitty movie, shitty soundtrack. Sorry, everybody has that really bad album, and that was Queen's. Flash Gordon, bad album. Listen to it. It's not good. It's, yeah, hey, they can't all be winners. You have a long enough career, they can't all be winners. And if Jimi Hendrix had a longer career, he'd have had some pretty bad stuff. I think the Doors, if Jim Morrison hadn't died, the Doors, or, I mean, let's say he did a solo project at some point, he would have done something really crappy at some point. Way too experimental to not have a crappy album at some point. When you're that experimental, when you're that out there, right, it either works or it really, really doesn't. And eventually, if you live long enough, you get to that point where it really, really doesn't. You find that it really doesn't at some point. Happens to everybody. Happens to the best of them. Janis Joplin, I think, yeah, she would have had a bad album eventually. She wasn't as experimental as like Jimi Hendrix or the Doors. I think she would have been less likely to have a really terrible album, something like really unlistenable. I think Jim Morrison could have done something truly unlistenable eventually. That was good. That was good. You know, of all of them, I think Jim Morrison is probably the most likely to do the worst music if he had lived. I think he really had the potential to really, really be really bad at some point. It's just my thought. Because really listen to the Doors. It's right on the edge of what works. Right? It worked, and it worked really well. But it's on that line where it really could have not worked really badly. Just saying. Just my thought. I love the Doors, but some of their stuff was really close to being crap. If they'd have tipped a little bit the wrong way, it could have been real bad. It was really good. It's that line. He rode that line where one side of it is really, really good and the other side is really, really bad. There really isn't any middle ground with that stuff, is there? Not the stuff he was doing. No. It's either awesome or terrible. I think he could have tipped into terrible real easy. It's my personal thought. So anyway, that was a good beer. Yeah, if you're gluten-free, or you just want something that doesn't, some people don't digest gluten that well. And some people, like me, I do digest gluten just fine. But I kind of, sometimes it just seems a little easier on the digestion. When my stomach's bothering me, sometimes I'll go gluten-free for a little bit. It's easy. My wife gets gluten-free, so we have the stuff in the house. But yeah, you want a good gluten-free beer? Yeah, New Grist. It's pretty good stuff. I got their multi-pack. That's the IPA. I think they also have a Pilsner and a Margarita beer. Maybe I'll do a review on those. I'll try them at some point and tell you if they're any good. But the IPA, that's worth drinking. That's a good one. It tastes like an IPA. I can't really tell the difference. So anyway, yeah, you guys should hit the subscribe thing and subscribe to my channel, because why the fuck not? You know, I mean, you guys, I know you guys subscribe to stuff. You subscribe to things. I bet you I'm at least as good as one or two other people you're subscribed to. I'm not going to say I'm that good at this. I'm not. I'm shit posting, mostly because, I don't know. I consider myself a pretty good musician. As far as videos go, I'm just kind of feeling my way through this crap. Isn't that what we do in life? We just feel our way through things. You know, I'm trying. I'm trying. You should subscribe to me just because, fuck it, I deserve it. I've paid my dues in life, I guess. I don't know. We're not really owed anything in life. Don't subscribe to me. Fuck. Man, don't subscribe to anybody. Fuck them all. And don't listen to my album. It's called I Didn't Get a Memory, which I think is a good album name, honestly. My kid named it. Right? She came up with that when she was like 5. You know, I thought that was a cool thing. You know, she said, I didn't get a memory because I forgot to take pictures of something. And it's a cool name. I thought it was, I wrote it down. It was cool enough I wrote it down. It became my album name. There's links to streaming down there. And a playlist comes up in a minute on YouTube. If you don't want to leave YouTube, you just hit the playlist and it'll play my album, right? I have a second album too. It's on there. Yeah, fuck it. Like, anybody cares. Like, who the fuck even cares about me? Nobody cares about me. I barely care about me. I'm just, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I love y'all. Peace out, baby.